I decided to talk to you today about Limpograss, and I will talk about three things. There will be, I will explain to you a little about the Limpograss to give you a background information, and then you'll talk about fertilization, and last I will talk about the stockpiling for cattle, okay, to graze in the winter. First, let's clarify about the Limpograss. What is Limpograss? And you hear about different terms that sometimes get very confusing because people talk about Hermatria and they say, I have Hermatria, I don't have Limpograss, right? Or I have Floralta, I don't have Hermatria. So, okay, let's go step by step. So, the common name of the grass is Limpograss, L-I-M-P-O, Limpograss, okay? That's the common name of the grass. Like we have Bahia grass, Bermuda grass, we have Limpograss, okay? Common name. So then people also talk about Hermatria, right? It's the same thing, but Hermatria is the scientific name of the Limpograss. Remember, Limpograss is the common name, scientific name is Hermatria, okay? And then it gets another layer of confusion there, right? And then people talk about Floralta. Have you heard about Floralta? Yeah, so then they talk about Floralta. Floralta is a cultivar of Limpograss. Now a little history about it. So that grass was collected in Africa, close to the Limpopo River, in South Africa and Mozambique. So in the past they used to have these people from USDA that travel around and collect grass and bring to Maryland, here. And so they have a bank there, they have all different grasses. So Limpograss was one of them. They collected different types and brought to Maryland. So then the researchers at the University of Florida, they knew about the grass, so they brought the material from Maryland to Gainesville, Dr. Ken Quisenberry, that he's retired, and he brought the material to Gainesville and started testing those grasses. And we have different types. They have Floralta, Big Alta, Green Alta, and Red Alta, right? Those were the four grasses that Dr. Quisenberry selected, and they put the name on, and at 1987, those were the ones released by the University of Florida. So what happened? The Green Alta didn't produce much. The Red Alta was really exotic because the stem was red and purple, but also didn't produce much. The Big Alta was a very good grass. People also call that big stem. It was very digestible, but for that reason, it didn't persist when you graze it. So what happened? People plant a lot of Big Alta because they like it, but the Big Alta died because it didn't persist. Which one is left? Floralta. Floralta was the one that was the most persistent and productive. So what happened is people spread the Floralta, and that was the main cultivar that we had for 25 years. A lot of people that has Limpograss at the ranch, they ask, I don't know what cultivar you have. I tell them Floralta, right? Because that was the one that was selected and left. So that's Floralta, and it's a very good cultivar. About 10 years ago, we have, through the cattlemen, we have the Research and Education Committee. So we have some producers asking why we don't have the cross between Big Alta and Floralta to try to have the quality of Big Alta and the production and persistence of Floralta, right? And the idea was generated in the Research and Education Committee, and then we worked together as a forage group, Dr. Quisenberry, Dr. Sollenberger, and I, and Dr. Blount, to cross the Big Alta and Floralta and make what they call a hybrid. We made a hybrid, and then we ended up with 152 plants out of that effort. So then we brought the plants to Ona and to Gainesville, and we did 7 years of selection of those. Out of the selections, through many, many different cycles, we end up with 2 superior cultivars. Okay, remember, the cultivar was Floralta, right? Floralta was one of the parents of the hybrids that we select. And the hybrids now that we have are called Gibituck and Kenhai. Okay, so Floralta is a cultivar, Gibituck is a cultivar, and Kenhai is a cultivar. 3 cultivars that we have now available that we can spread and plant around. Gibituck came from Gilbert Tucker. Some of you are familiar with with Bert Tucker. He was his father, and he was one of the first employers here at the research center at ONA. When they opened the facility, Mr. Gilbert Tucker used to work here. So that was in honor of Mr. Gilbert Tucker. And Ken High was also in the name of Dr. Quisenberry, that worked with Limpograss all his life. Ken Quisenberry, he became Ken High because Ken hybrid. So those are the two hybrids that we have now, okay? So with that in mind, we have seen that consistently those hybrids will produce about 20% more than the Floralta in different scenarios, right? So that's why we think that those were superior. We have another one called number 1 that you're gonna see there. We have at that time it was all number. We also have number 1, number 10, 32, but number 1 was a completely different plant that we try also to test it further, but didn't make the cut. So then number 1 was out, we released 2, that's called Gibituck and Ken High. So with that in mind, we start doing more work with Gibituck and Ken High to try to raise some information about, as I said, on the production standpoint, that is consistently better than the Floralta. And then one thing that we were not aiming for is the persistence, because the way that we selected those, it was very hard on the grass. A lot of my colleagues that work with Forage, they don't like the way that I do the research and things because they think that I'm here to kill the grass and I go too hard on the grass, but I think that is the goal, because if you die here, will not die at your place, right? So if you die here, I have no problem because the grass doesn't pay my salary, right? So then it's dead, it's gone. But we did a very hard selection on that grass here for 2 years, cutting really short very often. And the Ken High and the Gibituck kept growing. And with that in mind, persistence was not the goal, but it became something very important. So the Gibituck produced more and is more persistent, okay? So those are good things about this new hybrid. So Floralta is still a great grass, but if you're gonna plant a new block, I suggest to everybody, try to get plant material from the new hybrids, because you're gonna have a chance to have a better production there. You don't need to plant the whole thing, but plant a little place, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna be pleased with the outcome. So now switching to the fertilization, right? We did some work through the Florida Cattle Enhancement Board. We have been doing work with Limpograss through the fund from the Florida Cattle Enhancement Board now for 5-6 years. And something that you have in your material is something how this grass is very efficient to convert nutrients in biomass, but also the Limpograss is different from stargrass, Bermuda grass, Bahia grass, because you can let it grow longer and still have the benefit of the regrowth. Let's say you have a stargrass. Does anybody here have stargrass? Yeah, few people still have it. It's very difficult, very productive, a great nutritive value if you graze it at 4 weeks, right? Or 3 weeks. But if you let it grow to 6 weeks, it's a waste. So you become really stemmy and rank and the animals will not eat anymore. The Limpograss, you can grow to 12 weeks and keep growing. The grass will keep increasing. The forage accumulation there keep growing to 12 weeks. So, and the nutritive value will not decrease. The digestibility will still be good. So it's very different from any other warm season grass that you find for that reason. With that in mind, in our trial we saw you apply less, like what they call the lower side of the fertilization that we have in IFAS recommendation, and then the conversion from that nitrogen to biomass is much more efficient than if you apply the higher level and try to make that forage grow. For sure, if you apply more nitrogen, you're going to have more biomass. However, it's not as efficient per pound of nitrogen that you apply, right? Does it make sense? You apply a little less nitrogen on the lower recommendation and you're still going to have a pretty good translation in herbage there in forage accumulation. And let it grow. The Limpograss doesn't like if you come on top all the time and keep doing like you do Bahia grass. Some of you know Dr. Pate, and he has a lot of words of wisdom through his career. And he used to say that Bahia grass has 2 forage types. Florida has 2 forage types. The Bahia grass and the ones that will become Bahia grass. right? So, and that is why people have the Bahia grass, and then they plant the Floralta or the Gibtuck or the Kenhai, and they treat as a Bahia grass, right? They graze it short all the time, very frequent, and the Limpograss will die, and the Bahia grass will take over. So it requires management is better. You can plant in a really wet place that will survive and tolerate, but you need to manage that way. So the project that we have here, this is not Limpograss, it's like here, and the next block there is also related to the Florida Cattle Enhancement Board. That is a project about phosphorus fertilization in Limpograss. Many years ago, Dr. Silveira did an effort to try to refine the phosphorus fertilization in Bahia grass, something that is in place now, that we have more tools to make the right decision on the phosphorus fertilization. We have a tissue sample, we have the concentration of phosphorus in the tissue, we are able to make a decision if that plant is really deficient in phosphorus or not. So if I ask you, do you really want to apply phosphorus? You say no, right? Because you have to pay for it. Is that correct? Nobody want to pay for something that you don't need. Many times you may need some phosphorus, but you need to know and have a tool to make that decision if you really need. So because Limpograss is widely spread here in South Florida, and we have issues with phosphorus fertilization on the waterways, so we decide to use the same approach that Dr. Silveira, and she's working with us on that project, also to try to refine the phosphorus fertilization to the point that we have more tools to make the right decision about applying phosphorus or not applying phosphorus. And what is the goal of that? Save money, right? For production. We will not affect the waterways negatively, like we don't want to do, and we'll save money. So preliminary data from the first year show we apply phosphorus. All this land here has low phosphorus concentration in the soil. It's all considered low, okay? This one. We apply phosphorus and we have no response. The places that we apply phosphorus, there was no more forage production. Also, if you look at the horizon, you're going to see some white PVC there. We have the wells where we apply phosphorus and then we collect water to see what is the impact of the phosphorus fertilization in the water table and the water quality. And then there was no impact whatsoever because we apply very limited rates, and this grass has so much roots, everything that we apply will uptake. You increase the concentration of phosphorus in the plant, but there is no extra growth. So that means they have enough. You didn't need to add the extra phosphorus, even knowing that the soil was low in phosphorus. That's why we are doing the project for several years. We have Joao Lazarin there, that he is the graduate student working on the project, and we will try to find new ways and tools to make that decision when to really make a phosphorus recommendation and how will be the most efficient way to use phosphorus. Okay, last thing that we'll talk about, we finish fertilization now. Let me talk one more thing about fertilization. That is important as well. Yeah, I'll be here for a long time. No, I'm just kidding. I'll quit pretty soon. Dr. Silveira did also some work with potassium in Limpograss, right? Potassium is important for every plant, but we saw when she did on Limpograss and jigs, we saw the potassium was much more important in Bermuda grass than in Limpograss. And what really makes a difference in the Limpograss was the regrowth interval, have much greater influence in the production and persistence than the potassium fertilization. So general rule, we used to say in Limpograss you can apply a 20-5-10 if you're gonna cut hay or something, when in the Bermuda grass you need to go 20-5-20 and have the same ratio of nitrogen and potassium because the uptake and requires much more potassium than Limpograss. Okay, last thing, that's it on the fertilization. So now let's talk about the stockpiling, right? And I think that is where Limpograss is really important for us here in South Florida. It's our winter forage. We were in a field day in Mariana in February. We go there and we have annual ryegrass this tall, green, and we have clovers and everything, and people look at us and say, how is your ryegrass? I say, I don't know because I don't have one, right? So they grow those winter forages there very successfully. And they say it's still Florida, right? For us, it's almost Alabama, right? If you go up there. But it's completely different from here. So we grow some ryegrass, we probably have 45 days of growth, if you are lucky, or 2 months, and that doesn't pay off, right? So Limpograss is our winter forage. That's why we use it. So, and I'll tell what is the model, and then if you have some questions, we can talk more about it. When we apply the 50 pounds of nitrogen in, let's say, October 1st, right? In a year that you do not have a hurricane, let's put that out there, because that can throw off all the numbers that I'll tell you. But anyway, you don't have a hurricane, you have a fall, you put 50 pounds of nitrogen on your Limpograss, and you let it grow. By Christmas, you can start grazing that Limpograss, right? Then you can stock 1 cow-calf pair to the acre for 3 months during the whole breeding season. Sure, you need to add protein supplement, right? You can add cubes, you can add molasses, or whatever is your protein supplementation of choice there. But with the amount of forage that you have and the digestibility that you have there, you can graze it for 3 months during your breeding season on mature cows, not young cows, and then you can have a successful breeding season. You can have all the forage that those animals will need. We were talking about how expensive it's getting to harvest, to store, make hay, make haylage. Cost is increasing because of diesel, machinery, and everything else. So whoever has the choice to do the stockpiling program, you'll probably be the solution, well, for your winter season. One thing that we don't do very well is to plan for the winter season, right? What happens is when it gets around January, you're going to say, ooh, it's dry, it's a little cold, I have nothing, right? But interestingly, that has been happening for 2023 years, right? And we keep saying, well, it's cold, it's dry, and we don't have forage, right? So, and that will solve that problem, to have a little better planning, because that's tricky for us. If you go in Nebraska, if they don't put the cows in the dry lot and feed hay, the cows will die. In Florida, if you don't do anything, probably they will not die, right? We still have something to eat, but they will not die, but the breeding season will be a disaster. Pregnancy rates will be 30, right? We'll have skinny cows, and then we don't have calves to sell. So planning is probably the most important part, and having the Limpograss in the plan here for South Florida, I think is one of the best tools that we have. If you ask about Limpograss anywhere else outside of Florida, even in Africa, where it came from, people have no idea what it is. Zero. People never heard about it, don't know what it is. So it's something that we do really well here in South Florida, and for us it's probably a very important tool for cow-calf operations, because it can provide all the forage with the nutritive value that they need, and we can keep breeding cows during the winter here using the Limpograss as the forage. I will see if you have any questions. I'll be glad to try to entertain.
What's the cost of Limpograss against the hay?
Yeah, the question is about the cost, I think, to establish, yeah. Right? I think for you to establish an acre of Limpograss now, we're probably going to pay around the whole thing about $600. We have a limited amount of planting material that we sell to producers here. We sell about between 1 and 5 acres, and we charge every round bale of planting material, we charge $50. So you will need about 2 bales to the acre to plant that 1 acre. So then it will be $100 just on planting material, but the cost will come from prepare the land and fertilizer, lime, and everything else that we need to do. Yeah, the question was about how different it is, right? When you start your grazing period, I think you have in your handouts, when you start the grazing period, you have a lot of leaves. And then you start going down to the layers, right? And then going down. So with that number that I told you, in theory, in the first month, you need no supplement. For the first 30 days, from the leaves, the cow will have everything that it needs to keep the body condition score if it's around 5. But we recommend people to start supplementing, right there, because you can bump up your body condition score, so if something happens, you'll not be below 5 when you finish up, right? And those cows, they have young calves on it, so they need a little extra. But the second month, you're going to see that then you really need to bump up on your protein and energy. And when it gets later in the season, I think that's the time to take a look at the pasture and adjust the amount of supplement that you... Some people really like to feed the molasses, and you can do a lot of adjustment there. The company will help you with that, we will help you with that, because you can have something that will have a little less protein that will increase the intake, so then you can cover a little on the energy side as well, consuming the same amount of protein. But in our trial here, you can see how we need a little more supplement over time, but we kept the cows on body condition score 5 through the whole process, just adjusting the molasses amount. And one thing that is different in Limpograss than any other grass, during the growing season, the stem has the same digestibility as the leaf. That doesn't happen in any other tropical grass, okay? And if you have a Limpograss plant, the stem, you cut it, you're gonna see it's hollow. There is a hole inside, right? That's what keeps the plant alive when it's flooded, because oxygen for transpiration and energy will come through that hole. But that is also very good for the animals, because when it goes in the rumen microbes will have access to the whole entire stem, going from inside and outside. When a lot of other grasses will have the stem is a solid stem. So the microbes just go from outside, and there is a lot of lignin there, they cannot reach inside. But it's a very unique thing from the Limpograss, is how digestible that stem is. I really like the program, and I'm considering what we call a low input system, or a lot of people that make a living in the cow business, okay? What happened is we focus our fertilization in the Bahia grass in the spring, right? If you have money to fertilize your Limpograss, it will be great. But a lot of people invest on the Bahia grass and they have that spring growth. And then at the spring, you don't graze your Limpograss anymore, okay? You just shift it to Bahia grass and let the Limpograss rest. When it comes in the summer, you graze it lightly. But you still didn't fertilize it, right? But you graze it very lightly, just leaves, and let the stubble height to be tall, but you keep grazing. Sometimes that's the only thing that you can do, because the place is wet anyway, right? Sometimes it's underwater, the cows are not there to graze, so you go through the summer really lightly. But when you get around December, you can graze it shorter, and then you come and apply the fertilizer. That time. And then you can let stockpile, then you use in the winter. I think that's the best plan. Some people, they cannot get the cattle completely out of the Limpograss. You can still use it, but what I say is use it as little as you can, primarily during the fall. And then you can have something to graze in the winter. But if you have money for 2 fertilizations, it will be great, but that's not, I think, the scenario right now. If you can have 1, you'll be really glad to do it. And I think you can invest the first one on the Bahia grass and the fall one in the Limpograss, and I think that's a good plan. Yeah, the question is about when you graze, and if I said December, sorry, it's September. You graze it a little shorter, in September, and then you fertilize it. And then you can let that grass grow. It's according to your necessity. So if you let it grow for 3 months, you'll be great. But if you need to come back in 2 months, you'll be great as well. I think what we have seen, if you go 8 weeks, the herbage accumulation stops right there. So then it's dying on the top and is putting new leaves there, if you still have a little warm weather. So 8 weeks will be probably good. 12 weeks.
What about frost?
Yeah, the frost on Hermatra, it's very good, because you can see sometimes it freeze and you burn the Bahia grass, the Hermatra get purple, yep. Right? It's because of the composition of the fatty acids in the membrane. It has more unsaturated fatty acids, and that doesn't freeze as easy. So you can get a frost and still have green leaves. But if you get 2 or 3, like they get up north, they will get really brown. But it's still, the brown is still digestible. But people really ask me when they get a freeze, they say, what happened to the protein, right? There is nothing happens to the protein. Because sometimes it's interesting, but it may increase the protein because it decreases the energy. Because it's a proportion, you decrease the energy, the protein go up a little bit. But I think the question is when it freezes hard and you get brown, so you are losing energy every day. So that is, people ask me, oh, I got a frost today, should I cut it for hay? I said, if you have the choice, that'll be great. If you were planning to cut, right? If not, you can start grazing and that'll keep your program going. You will decrease the energy, but the protein will keep around the same.